Burying the Sun, Chapter 4. Maria Leaves. July 1941. Excuse me. Yelena's patriotic work took place on the roof of the Winter Palace, where she worked for 3 hours each night as an air raid warden. Though German Messerschmitts sometimes flew over the city, they flew at very high altitudes. As yet there were no bombs, but they could come at any time, and the city had to be prepared. I hated the idea of Yelena risking her life every night, but she was proud of her assignment. You are digging air raid shelters, Georgie, and I will warn everyone when we go into them. When to go into them. You will protect the people, and I will protect the buildings. A building isn't worth a life. Promise me you will get down and into the safety of a shelter if the planes come. She wouldn't promise. There are thousands and thousands of girls like me in Leningrad, she said, but there is only one Winter Palace. Come and see for yourself, Georgie. There are hundreds of palaces, I argued, and to myself I said, but there is no one like you. Still, I agreed to join her one night after my digging was over. I was eager to see the palace where long ago my mama had lived with the Empress and the Tsar and their children. She had told Maria and me stories of ballrooms with golden ceilings, and a room whose walls were made of precious stone. Mama, I said, I'm going with Yelena tonight to the Winter Palace. Would you like to come with us? Mama smiled sadly. I'd give a great deal to visit the Winter Palace, I remember, but not today's Winter Palace. In a hushed voice she said, there was a great deal of injustice when the Tsar lived there, Georgie, but it was spoiled for me when the Bolsheviks took it over. They planned the arrests and murders of thousands of people there. I have no wish to see it again. After a moment, Mama relented, for her anger never lasted long, burning and then cooling just as quickly. Of course you must go with Yelena. She's a brave girl, and whatever has happened in the palace, the building itself must not be blamed. It has always been one of those glories of St. Petersburg. The roof of the palace stretched for acres, so Yelena was only one of many air raid wardens assigned to the roof. To reach Yelena's section, we went through door after door and climbed stairway after stairway. The part of the palace we traveled through was unoccupied. I gasped at what I saw. Gilded walls, ceilings painted with cupids flying about in the blue sky and pink clouds, marble columns, and floors so shiny you could see your reflection in them. Though the crystal chandeliers and all the valuable furniture and paintings had been put away, I could still imagine them as Mama had described them. The great empty rooms of the palace were so eerie. To break the tension, I let go of Yelena's hand and, taking off my shoes, began to slide about over a polished floor. At first, Yelena was shocked, but after a moment she slipped out of her shoes and the two of us glided back and forth, trying to see who could slide the longest distance. When we heard one of the guards coming, we hurriedly got into our shoes and, laughing, raced up the stairway. At each roof station there were pails of water and sand, as well as a wicked-looking axe. I tried to imagine Yelena flailing about with the axe. I've tried it, Georgie. It's heavy, but if I had to, I know I could do it. Yelena's section looked northwest across the Neva to Vasilevsky Island. We settled comfortably against one of the chimneys. Though it was night, a pale sun gilded the Neva. In the sky there was nothing more dangerous than a few pink clouds. The palace was only 4 stories high, yet we looked down on the green roofs of Leningrad with their hundreds of chimneys, like so many mushrooms springing up from a forest floor. More than 200 years ago, Peter the Great had built a city where there had been nothing but marshes and sea. When it was finished, he ruled that no building could be taller than his palace. Up here on the roof, we are like kings and queens, Yelena said, looking out over our kingdom. Across the Neva was the camouflage spire of the Peter and Paul fortress, and on the Vasilevsky Island, the university buildings. Yelena said, with the war, it looks like we will never be students at the university, Georgie. Still, it's nice to think about, like keeping yourself from freezing in the cold by imagining what it would be like to walk into a warm room. What would you study at the university? I asked. Russian literature, she said. I want to read Pushkin and Lermontov and every Russian poem that has ever been written. I looked around nervously. I didn't want anyone to overhear Yelena if she was going to recite Lermontov, since she always recited his love poetry. But she only asked, "Georgie, what will you study if the war ends?" "I want to go back to Siberia," I said. Quickly I added, "Not to the Dudenka and the cold and the exile, but to the Siberia Maria and I saw in the summer, the birch trees and the great river and the reindeer, and most of all, the Samoyed people who were so good to us. The Communist Party has shut them and their reindeer up in farms. The Samoyeds must hate it. I want to study the native peoples of Russia. I want to become an expert and convince the party to let the Samoyeds and their reindeer roam free. We still have the boots and parka they made for my father. I'll show them to you sometime." Across from the Vasilevsky Island were Petrograd Island and the Lenfilm movie studio where all the famous movies were made. "Maybe I'll write a great film," Yelena said, "like Ivan the Terrible. And I'll play Ivan." So we sat talking for 3 hours in the twilight of the white night. At midnight, the next shift arrived, and we made our way back down the stairs and through the empty palace rooms with their ghosts of the dead Tsar and Empress and their poor dead son and daughters. Because of staying up so late, I was half asleep the next morning when I reached the Hermitage. Maria was already there. Although some of the museum employees had left for the army and some had been sent off, like Victor, to the Luga River to build fortifications against the Germans, Comrade Orbelli had managed to recruit new workers. One trainload of the museum's treasures had already left with hundreds of crates. As I loaded them onto the railroad cars, I couldn't help but notice the anti-aircraft guns mounted on the cars like giant nursemaids to watch over their charges. Now the second shipment was nearly ready. There was little left in the museum, only the empty frames. While I was packing up one of the last boxes, a soldier wandered into the gallery. Vera, one of the guards, hurried to stop him, calling, "Ostanovka! Halt!" Embarrassed, the soldier stopped in his tracks. "Prostitier," he mumbled. "I am from the country and have never been in Leningrad. When our company passed through the city, I wanted to look at the great museum. We learned about it in our school." "Prostitier," he said again, and turned to leave. "That's all right, Vera," I said. With the way the war was going, the soldier might never get to see the museum again. "Since you've come this far," I told him, "I'll give you a tour." The soldier looked around the gallery, disappointed and puzzled. "The frames are all empty." "Never mind, I packed every painting in this room, and I know them like the back of my hand. All Dutch, every one. There, for example." Guessing what would be sure to interest him, I pointed to an empty gold frame. "That is a picture of a Dutch farm. You can see a man at his spring plowing. He has 2 big white horses. They look strong enough to pull the whole country to another place on the map. Great muscly fellows." The soldier was staring very hard at the empty frame, nodding his head. "Very few trees," I went on, "only 1 or 2 starting to bud out. Holland is built on the sea, so you don't have a lot of trees. And in the background, the steeple of a church. Over on the right-hand side is a windmill. The Dutch have to spend their lives pumping away the sea. The best thing of all is the sky. In all these paintings, it's the finest thing. Holland is flat, so you get as much sky as you want, miles of it. The painters make the most of it. This one is filled with rosy clouds spread like sour cream on a dish of borscht, so that just a bit of the beet juice seeps through." He looked from the frame and to me and back again, nodding eagerly. "Yes," he said, "I see it all. We would have given much to have such horses on our collective farm." I took him from empty frame to empty frame, pointing out in one picture how cleverly the artist had placed the snow over the countryside, and in another how everyone in the village, adults and children alike, were skating on the river, and how a fine big brown dog with a patch of white on his chest was on the ice. When he left, the soldier took my hand in his and shook it vigorously. "Wonderful pictures," he said. "I'll never forget them, and I'll tell the others on the farm when I get back from the front, especially the big horses." That night there was borscht for dinner, and it reminded me of the farmer soldier who had come to the gallery. Maria laughed at my story, but I knew she hadn't really listened to me. I guess she had something she wanted to say to us. I could always tell because she bit her lip and peeked out from underneath from under her dark lashes. Mama knew it as well. When I finished my tale, Mama said, "Maria, something is on your mind." In one long breath, the words tumbled out. "It is Comrade Orbelli. He has assigned me to travel with the train this time when the last shipment from the Hermitage leaves. Several of us are going, for there must be people at the other end who know how to preserve the treasures. It can't be too damp or too dry for them, or they will be ruined. Only I hate to be away from Leningrad. I don't want to leave you, Mama, and if I go, Georgie is sure to do something foolish." With great indignation, I threw my napkin at her. Yet the truth was, I was shaken by the idea that she would leave us. I had never been separated from Maria. Without her, I might be in an orphanage or lie buried someplace in Siberia. "How long will you be gone, dear?" Mama asked. Her face was pale, but her voice was strong. Better than anyone, she knew that you could not say no to an order. "I don't know, Mama. They won't tell us, or perhaps they don't know. It could be months, or longer. It depends on the war. Where are you to go?" From habit, Maria lowered her voice. "That's the worst part of it. It's a secret. No one has been told." "I know," I said. Maria stared at me. "Don't be so smart. Of course you don't know." "I don't know, but I do know. When we were loading the first train, I got to talking with the engineer about how fast the train could go and so forth, and he told me the train was going to Sverdlovsk. You'll be safe enough from the Germans there." Maria's brown eyes were very round. She whispered, "Georgie, you shouldn't have said that." Mama began to sob. We both looked at her with alarm. Suddenly I realized what I had done. I and my bragging and my big mouth. The city, far away in the Ural Mountains, that was now called Sverdlovsk, was once called Yekaterinburg. Yekaterinburg, which means the Empress Catherine's city. Like all names in Russia that had anything to do with Tsars or empresses, the name had been changed, but to Mama, Yekaterinburg stood for hell itself. It was in that city that the Bolsheviks had murdered the Tsar and Empress and their son and 4 daughters, the 4 daughters who had been like sisters to Mama. "No, Maria," Mama said, "you can't go to that terrible place. It's cursed. I'll never see you again." Maria put her arms around Mama. "Mama, I have to go. Not only is it an order that I mustn't disobey, but those paintings are everything to me. They are like my children. I must go with them." "Not there, not there," Mama whispered. "That was long ago," Maria pleaded. "In my heart it was only a minute ago," Mama said, but she wiped the tears from her eyes. She sighed. "You're right, Maria. When all of this is over, whether we are still here or not, those treasures will be there to remind people what the war was all about. In Germany, they're burning paintings. Here we are risking our lives to save them." The next day, with many kisses and promises to write, Maria left. Her last words to me, "Take care of Mama, Georgie, and stay out of trouble."